And hello again and welcome to America Can We Talk and to today's First Five. I'm Debbie Georgatos. You may have noticed in the presidential debate between President Trump and he who would be President Biden, as well as during the VP debate, there was reference made to the idea that America is coming up on a very dark winter, a scary winter, a winter where COVID will undoubtedly increase in great numbers, probably going to be the worst flu season since time began, all sorts of dark prognostications. And obviously, I want to talk about that in the first five today, not just about whether that's even justified in terms of data we actually know, but an even deeper point, what the message or mission is of the left in sending out those kind of messages to America. To start with, you heard, in fact, I was going to grab the clip, but I couldn't stand to play it again, but there was a clip in which Vice President Biden, candidate Biden, was talking about how he was going to do things differently with COVID. He was going to do things different, and he said, and he pounds his fist on the table and says, until we get rid of this virus, and all these fools are clapping and cheering. So I want to start with that point. The idea that somehow, if there had only been a different president of the United States, that we would be rid of the virus, or we'd have a plan to get rid of the virus, is completely absurd. It's childish that it actually excites some people, that they hear that and think, oh, that's great. Long as we choose Biden for president, we're going to get rid of the virus. He said he's going to make it go away. But somehow, Vice President Biden manages to get mileage out of the idea that we're going to end the virus, says he. And he says it with a fierce look in his eyes, we're going to end the virus. People, that's ridiculous. And to be perfectly clear, he's talking about a mask mandate. He keeps trying to change his mind, saying, yes, mask mandate, no mask mandate, yes, no, everything people want to hear. The fact is he and Kamala Harris are talking about a mask mandate. So to state the obvious, a mask mandate, social distancing, and even ordering everyone to stay at home until further notice, none of those things will end the virus. None of those things. They are simply precautionary measures advised by some doctors, but not all doctors, advised by doctors in charge of America's policy, but they are simply devices to try to help people protect themselves from contracting the virus. They do not end the virus. They don't change anything about it. They just may or may not impact whether certain people become afflicted with coronavirus. What I really wanted to hit on is the reason that Vice President Biden and Kamala Harris talk about this idea that we're heading into a dark winter, which, by the way, they have no crystal ball. They have no way of knowing that. No way of knowing if COVID will go the way of some viruses which just naturally dissipate, or other viruses that multiply, which it has been doing. They have no idea what's going to happen this winter. But what they're trying to do is implant fear in the hearts of the American people. They're trying to get the American people to become increasingly fearful about the virus and about America's future. They're trying to cast aspersions on President Trump, to attack him for not having a plan. Another big lie the left keeps spewing. In fact, you read some of these left-wing websites, they say, well, you know, the whole problem is Biden says this, Kamala Harris says it, Trump had no plan. And when either of them are ever pressed, which rarely happens, ever pressed, really, what is your plan? Every single thing they say is already something President Trump has been doing and is doing. There's no magic plan. There's no magic power Biden or anyone else has to make the virus go away. But they appeal to the childish, immature, vulnerable, and easily manipulable subset of the American people who think somehow, if only we had the right president, we'd never have had this virus. This is what is happening, and it is embarrassing that there are a significant number of people in America who actually listen to Biden and Kamala Harris and say, oh, I'm going with them. They have a plan. Check yourself. Everything they write down, they say their plan, are things that President Trump has already been doing. Unless you want to count a mask mandate until who knows when, what they're proposing as their plan is just simply the same things that have already been discussed and practiced in America. But the other thing the left is doing in this whole notion is they are planting the seed in the minds of the American people that a health threat, a health crisis, legitimizes and justifies taking away the freedom of the people, taking away your constitutional right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the unspoken argument of Biden, Kamala Harris, and all the leftists supporting them, is that when there's a crisis, and this isn't even a crisis, as we've been over many times on the show, but when there's a crisis, all of us simply should recognize, oh, time to surrender our liberty, time to surrender our individual rights to attend church, our right to free speech, our right to free assembly, our right to run our businesses, to own private property, to develop our businesses. All of that, we are told, we are being taught by the radical left to simply surrender, because there is a health crisis called COVID. You know, to be very clear, everything the left is proposing, either Trump's already done or we've done in some varying degree, and none of those things make the virus go away. None of those things, in Biden's words, end the virus. They are making fools of the American people, the left is, by convincing people that somehow if you'd only chosen the right president, none of this would have happened. And you know, our founders, America's founders, had this radical idea, we've talked about many times on this show, that the governance of a free people, the power, the core power that runs a country of free people, is we the people. The founders actually recognized they were entrusting the American people with the right of self-governance. The whole concept of we are smart enough, we're capable enough, we can have self-governance, we the people govern ourselves, so we elect a legislature and they make laws, and we have an executive branch and they enforce the laws, then we have courts, which if they ever would stay in their own lane, only interpret laws. But the whole concept of America was the idea that we Americans have the right to self-governance. What the left is teaching America in this whole episode with COVID in 2020 is that you don't really have the capacity, the ability, you can't govern yourselves. You have to be told how to take care of yourselves. And I tell you, I'm getting at this point, I want to just drive it home today. The whole COVID threat, the coronavirus threat, has been politicized by the American left with the goal of cementing and increasing the power of government, cementing and increasing the tyranny the left wishes to impose on the American people. The whole idea that we'll somehow surrender all of our freedom just for this illusion, this false illusion of safety and being taken care of. I'll make one other point in this first five and wrap it up. So we had, all of this, it's bad enough what the government is doing in terms of limiting our freedom, telling us when we can leave our houses, what we have to wear, do we have to socially distance, when we can go to work, whether we have to stay at home, whether we're allowed to go outside or not, whether we can have Thanksgiving dinner with our families, inside with whoever we want to have at our house. Bad enough the government's using this COVID problem that has a 99% survival rate. It's not this deadly plague that we first thought it was, but we're even accepting censoring by social media, by the big tech giants. We have interviews I've done on this show, interviews by other talk show hosts taken down, and you get a scolding too in the email, by the way. You get a scolding saying your posting violates our community standards. You're spreading things that may not be true, and so we're going to take your posting down. There was even a posting I'll mention in wrapping up the first five, a posting by Bill Walton. He's a long-time known, very serious, hardly a hothead at all. He's a very serious, substantive, conservative leader for decades. Bill Walton has his own show, and he, on his show, interviewed a guy who was one of three authors that wrote a new book called The Price of Panic: How the Tyranny of Experts Turned a Pandemic into a Catastrophe. So Bill Walton, interviews this guy named Jay Richards, who wrote a book with two other people, with a mathematician and a scientist who's a professor of statistics, and another professor who is a professor of molecular biology. Three of them wrote a book essentially about the exaggeration of the American political response to coronavirus and how it's actually been very detrimental to our country, turning a pandemic into a catastrophe. Even that kind of interview, substantive, serious book, taken down by YouTube as inconsistent with their standards, their community standards. And wrapping up my first five, I want to say this. eventually the virus will go away. Or we may have mutations and other viruses will come along. But we are watching the American left use this virus as a means of acquiring political power, expanding their tyranny from Washington, and worse than that, which is bad enough, but they're changing the perception of the American people about what is fair and right for government to do. What is government justified to do in doing to protect your health? We're being convinced to surrender our liberty and give the government more power to impose tyrannical rules because we're not paying attention to the facts, and we've been so duped into a epidemic of fear in this country. And it is precisely the purpose of the left's focus on this virus, the left's spreading of this politicized medicine, the words, oh, you're going to have a worst season ever, we're going to have a terrible flu season and a terrible COVID virus season. The point of it is to spread fear, because when people are fearful, tyrants win and individual people surrender their freedom. That's what we're up against in this virus at this time. And that, my very fine friends, is today's First Five.